A life in chains. The damp air clung to his fur, thick with the scent of rust, mold, and the faint metallic tang of something he had long stopped recognizing. Hope. The cage was too small for him. The walls pressed in from all sides, metal bars groaning under the weight of years spent in neglect. Every movement sent a sharp ache through his frail body, a reminder of the hunger gnawing at his ribs. His once mighty frame, the body of a proud and powerful German shepherd, was now little more than a shell. Cassian had been here for as long as he could remember. There was no before, only now. Only this. A cold, unforgiving space that had become his world. His life had been reduced to the scraping of a rusted food bowl against the floor whenever the man tossed in scraps, if he remembered to feed him at all. Some nights, there was nothing. Just the gnawing hunger that curled like a snake in his belly. The only companions he had were the rats, scurrying in the shadows, bold enough to steal whatever crumbs fell from his reach. He didn't even try to chase them anymore. His strength had faded, replaced by a quiet resignation. He had learned the rules of this world. Barking didn't help. Growling brought punishment. Expecting kindness was a fool's dream. And yet, something was different tonight. A sound, distant at first, but growing louder. Footsteps. Not the heavy, careless stride of the man who sometimes threw food his way. No, these steps were different, lighter, cautious. Cassian's ears twitched, though the motion sent a dull pain through his weary frame. His eyes flickered open, the dim light filtering through the cracks in the warehouse ceiling, casting eerie patterns on the cold concrete floor. Then, voices. "Oh my God, Zephyr. Look at him." A woman's voice, soft but filled with something unfamiliar. Not cruelty. Not indifference. Something else. Sadness. I knew it was bad. Amaris, but this. A second voice. Male, deeper, tinged with quiet fury. This is worse than I imagined. The heavy metal door screeched open, and Cassian flinched instinctively, pressing his body against the back of the cage. He knew what happened when humans got too close. He had felt it before. The sting of a boot, the sharp bite of a metal rod when he barked too loudly or moved too quickly. His breath came faster, shallow and panicked, his body instinctively trying to make itself smaller. Then, warmth. Soft golden light from a flashlight swept across the cold warehouse, illuminating the dust dancing in the air. The figures stepped inside, their voices hushed, movements careful. The woman knelt down near the cage, her eyes locking onto his. She didn't move closer. She didn't reach for him. She just looked. "Hey, buddy," she whispered, her voice laced with something he had forgotten existed. Gentleness. "It's okay. We're not here to hurt you." Cassian stared at her, unblinking. Humans lied. He had learned that, but something about her presence made his ears flick forward just slightly. The man, Zephyr, crouched beside her, his sharp blue eyes scanning the rusted chains wrapped tightly around the cage door. He ran a hand over the corroded metal, testing its strength. "This is illegal. No one should be able to do this to an animal." His jaw tightened. "We're getting him out of here." Cassian didn't understand their words, but he understood their tone, and it confused him. Amaris slowly reached into her pocket, pulling something out. A piece of bread. Fresh. The scent wafted through the air, cutting through the stink of rust and filth. His stomach clenched. He hadn't eaten in how long? She placed the bread gently on the floor, just beyond the cage. No sudden movements. No commands. Just an offering. Cassian hesitated. This was a trick. It had to be. Humans dangled food before only to snatch it away, to laugh, to punish. His eyes flicked between her hand and the bread, his body tense. Seconds stretched into minutes. And then, against every instinct, against years of learned fear, he stretched his neck forward just slightly. His nose twitched. No strange smells. No danger. Slowly, cautiously, he took a bite. Nothing happened. No yelling. No pain. Just warmth in his mouth and the satisfying taste of something real. Amaris exhaled softly, a small smile tugging at her lips. "Good boy," she murmured. "That's it." Zephyr huffed, crossing his arms. "This is going to take time." "Then we take our time," Amaris responded without hesitation. Cassian didn't understand their words, but he understood one thing. For the first time in his life, someone was waiting for him. Part 2. Walking into Freedom. Cassian swallowed the last crumbs, his eyes flickering between the woman and the man. His body still trembled, but something was shifting inside him. The door to the cage was still closed, but for the first time, he didn't feel entirely trapped. Zephyr pulled something from his belt, bolt cutters. The sharp glint of metal made Cassian tense. His body remembered things too well. Tools like those had never meant kindness. They meant pain. Amaris saw the shift in his posture and placed a hand gently against the bars. Not reaching in, not trying to touch him, just steadying herself. "It's okay, Cassian," she whispered. His name. He had a name. Zephyr positioned the cutters over the first chain and squeezed. Snap. The sound was deafening in the quiet warehouse. Cassian flinched violently, his body pressing against the back of the cage, his breath coming faster. "It's all right," Amaris soothed, keeping her voice steady. Another chain. Snap. The door rattled slightly, loosening for the first time in what felt like forever. Cassian stared at it. He had dreamed of this moment before, in the haze of hunger and exhaustion. Dreamed of the bars breaking, of his body stretching into the open space beyond. But that was all it had been, a dream. Now the exit was right there. But he was afraid. The last chain snapped, and the cage door creaked open an inch. Silence. Cassian didn't move. His paws were glued to the cold, filthy floor. Amaris reached into her bag and pulled out another small piece of bread. But this time, she didn't place it inside the cage. She placed it on the ground outside. Cassian's stomach clenched. Hunger told him to move, but fear held him back. Zephyr stepped away, giving him space. "No pressure, buddy," he said quietly. But the door's open. Cassian's mind screamed at him to stay put. But another voice, small and unfamiliar, whispered something else. "Go." His muscles trembled as he took a hesitant step forward, one paw barely out of the cage. The concrete floor outside felt cold. Different. He waited for the punishment. It never came. Amaris held her breath, watching him. Another step. And another. Then, suddenly, he was out. Completely out. The air smelled different out here. Cleaner. His body felt unsteady, like he had forgotten how to stand outside confinement. Amaris smiled, eyes glistening. "That's it, boy," she whispered. Zephyr let out a breath. "We did it." Cassian wasn't sure what it was. All he knew was that for the first time in his life, the door was open, and he had stepped through it. For the first time, he was free. A second chance at life. Cassian stood frozen, his paws planted firmly on the cold concrete. The door to his prison was wide open, yet a strange feeling settled deep in his chest. Uncertainty. For so long, these bars had defined his world. The rusted metal, the damp floor, the stale air. It was all he had ever known. Outside felt too big, too unfamiliar. Could he really step forward? Could he trust that what lay beyond wasn't another trick, another painful disappointment? Zephyr and Amaris didn't move. They waited, silent, patient. For the first time in his life, no one was forcing him to act. No one was yelling. No one was demanding. No one was hurting him. The choice was his. Cassian took a deep breath. And then, inch by inch, he moved. One paw, then another. The shift of weight felt strange, his legs wobbling slightly. His body had spent too long in confinement. His muscles weak, his instincts muddled. The cold air wrapped around him as if welcoming him to something new. Freedom. He didn't stop. He walked past the cage, through the dust-filled warehouse, and into the light filtering through the open door. Each step felt like shedding the chains of his past, leaving behind the darkness that had held him captive for years. Amaris exhaled, her voice barely above a whisper. "You did it, boy." Zephyr let out a slow breath, shaking his head in quiet disbelief. "He's free." Cassian lifted his head, sniffing the air. The scent of dampness and filth still lingered, but beyond that, there was something different. Something fresh. Grass. Trees. The world outside. For the first time, he felt the sun touch his fur. It was warm. He blinked up at the sky, the vast blue stretching endlessly above him. He had forgotten what it looked like, forgotten that the world was more than 4 steel walls and a ceiling caving in with decay. Then something touched his fur. A hand. Gentle. Careful. He stiffened but didn't pull away. Amaris knelt beside him, her fingers brushing against his head in the lightest of touches. "You're safe now," she whispered. Safe. The word wrapped around him like a blanket, unfamiliar, but not unwelcome. Zephyr adjusted his grip on the bolt cutters and turned to Amaris. "We should get him checked out. He needs food, water, a vet. Who knows how long he's been in there?" Cassian flicked his ears. The words didn't make sense, but their tone did. Concern. Care. The chains were gone, the door was open, but still, was this real? Then Amaris stood, took a step forward, and gently patted her leg. "Come on, Cassian. Let's go home." Home. His mind stumbled over the word. Home had never been a place for him. It had been a cage, a space of darkness and solitude. But when Amaris said it, it felt like something else. Something good. Cassian took a step, then another. And before he even realized what he was doing, he followed her. 1 week later, the sound of the wind through the trees was different here. It didn't whistle through broken windows or rattle rusted doors. It danced between leaves, rustling the branches, carrying the scent of grass and earth. Cassian lay in the soft dirt near the back porch, his body stretched out under the warmth of the sun. No bars, no chains, just open space. His ribs still showed, but his fur was cleaner, no longer tangled with filth. His legs still wobbled sometimes, but they carried him forward without hesitation. He was learning, step by step, what life outside a cage felt like. A sound caught his attention. A door opening. Cassian lifted his head just as Amaris stepped onto the porch. She smiled. "There you are." Her voice no longer made him flinch. It no longer sent his body curling into itself in anticipation of pain. Now when she spoke, something inside him relaxed. She walked over and knelt beside him, running a hand through his fur. "You're looking better, you know that." Cassian didn't know what the words meant, but her tone made his tail thump against the ground. She laughed. "Oh, so you do understand me now." Cassian lifted his head, ears twitching. A week ago, he wouldn't have let her this close. He wouldn't have let her touch him, wouldn't have leaned into her presence. But now he trusted her. Zephyr appeared at the doorway, crossing his arms. "You're spoiling him." Amaris rolled her eyes. "He deserves to be spoiled." Cassian watched them, something warm settling in his chest. Was this what home felt like? The thought was foreign, but not unwelcome. Amaris sighed, running her fingers gently along his ears. "You're stuck with us now, buddy." Cassian looked at her, then at Zephyr. He thought of the cage, the darkness, the hunger, the loneliness. And then he thought of this moment. The sun, the warmth, the voices filled with something he had never known before. Love. He gave a small sigh and rested his head against Amaris's knee. Zephyr chuckled. "I think that's a yes." For the first time in his life, Cassian had made a choice. And for the first time, he was happy. He was home. This concludes the story. Thank you for watching until the end. I hope you found it enjoyable. If you did, please consider liking the video and sharing it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and activate the notification bell for more captivating stories. Have a great day.